So, guys, we're here. We're into it a couple of minutes, and I apologise. Let's get on with talking about tips, trees, insects, pests, and soils. And I believe I can share my screen. Hopefully, Peter.
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you already. And I'm going to share. I'm going to make sure I share the right one, which is this one. I believe that's the right one. So I just need to push this out to the side. Actually, you want to share my desktop, don't I? You share desktop. There is a desktop option, Peter, isn't there?
I think so.
Yeah, share my screen. That's it. Got it. Again, you shouldn't have changed much, but you should see a Zoom screen in front of you. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah, great. And I think we're in the right spot. So let's start having a look at the correspondence that came in for tips, and there's some great stuff there. I raised it here as well as in the war. The Botanical Dictionary, Peter, I believe, is in the resources folder for
okay.
war. And it's a file that's marked, it's what's called a .dic, D-I-C, short for dictionary file. It's just essentially a straight Word file or listing. So you can open it up with lots of different things, depending on what sort of computer you've got. If you've got a Mac are a little less cooperative with the general world, but apart from that, it's just simply an information file, so it can be opened up and you can use it. If you're using Word, you can use it to make sure that you don't spell plant names incorrectly as often, because it'll act as a dictionary in your dictionary process and help rectify that. So that's that one. Okay, this is the quick questions that came in late. And have we got Melanie on the line yet? No. I'll hold that back a fraction then.
Hi, I'm here.
You are. Great.
Yep, sorry, I was on mute.
No, that's fine. So we've got something growing on the bark or happening on the bark of this tree. And I think you can all see that. There's this, I'll just make it a fraction bigger so that it's easier for you guys. Everyone see that fairly clearly?
Yeah.
So the staining around here and on here. Second shot shows you some more staining of the tree. The tree looks basically healthy, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's it. The rest of the tree is in decent shape, but we lost another one to Phytophthera a few years ago.
Okay. It doesn't look like Phytophthera. That's the good news. Phytophthera is a pathogen, and it would be causing some form of necrosis or dying off around that. And it doesn't look like that.
Yeah. You'd usually have dieback, wouldn't you?
Yeah, you would have a lesion,
a
inverted lesion, something like a upside down V, and or the tree occluding to that. So you'll see it, for example, Phytophthora will hit platanus, and platanus will often continue for decades with Phytophthora because it's so vigorous. It really is a problem when something's stressed, and then it becomes the issue. So it starts off, it's a water mold. Remember, it swims around. So stressed trees after a long wet period or a period where there's lots of water tends to be when you start to see the Phytophthora get going. There's a little bit of something happening.
Would you see it in the crown as well, Mark?
Sorry?
Would you see indication in the crown as well?
The indication, so it's a fungus that initially will start attacking roots and absorbing roots. So you'll see the typical symptoms of stress, drought stress, depending on how quickly it gets going and what sort of environment the tree's going through. If it's a tree that's been really badly stressed by drought and it's sort of near its limit, so has poor vitality. Remember, vitality is that process of being able to deal with the things that are thrown at you. It's the bank account reserves, so to speak, of of the person. Big bill comes in, you've got a few $1,000,000 sitting in your bank account. Andrew, you just smile and say, yeah, I'll pay that bill. It's only $100,000. But if you're got $5 in the bank and a $100,000 bill comes in and you're not looking like you're going to produce a lot of money in the next few years, you're packing up your shuttles and running away. You've got problems.
And I'm probably more familiar with signs of Phytophthora in native understory species, because my master's research involved isolating mycorrhizal fungus from Apacris impressa as part of it. So I used to always test for Phytophthora, do either the pair baiting or the float test with little uke seedlings before I did any fungal isolations, and it's quite distinct. So that's why I was kind of surprised to get this diagnosis of possibly Phytophthora. So I thought I'd throw it out to the group. Thanks.
Yeah. So look, it doesn't look like it, and you've got some key indicator plants that do respond to Phytophthora. A lot of things coexist with it moderately well. It's ubiquitous, as you would have found from your baiting exercises. Anywhere where human disturbances happened in Australia really is commonplace, and that becomes one of the issues in terms of some of the more sensitive areas. In some of the consent authorities will ask for an assessment of whether the Phytophthora is on the site, and you can pretty well guess that if it's Sydney metropolitan, there's a reasonable chance that it's there. And you make 10 or 15 baits and you'll have a reasonably high likelihood of isolating at least one of those into to having it. So it's fairly commonplace. So no, it doesn't look like that. It looks possibly like it being just purely superficial. Although this here looks like it's had a bit of resin production or exudate production.
So they have
done a bit of injury to the external, whatever it is, but it doesn't look like it's problematic. The fact that it's got good reserves and there's no dead tissue, and again, I'm looking at a picture. It's hard. Doesn't look like that's necrotic there. It just looks like it's discolored. So if that is necrotic, and Phytophthora gets into the cambium, and the first thing it wants to do is eat and kill the cambium. And something like younger, smaller trees, so your understory stuff, can, particularly the recently germinated stuff, can be more prone to problems from water molds in general, including things like pythium, because they don't have a lot of reserves. They don't have that banking.
It kills them pretty quickly.
So it doesn't look that way, and it looks like there's been some elm leaf beetle on this. Again, it doesn't look like it's particularly bad.
Does Phytophthora make its way that far up the trunk, Mark?
No, you'll often see on a good infestation, you'll often see a good infestation, a very vigorous infestation. You'll see an inverted V going up the trunk, where a lesion will go up. You'll see mycelium if you remove the dead bark. But I've never seen it up more than maybe half a metre or so. That doesn't mean it can't get higher, but if it's getting to that sort of level of damage, it's usually you're looking at a dead tree rather than anything else. So you're not looking at it's slowly going up and up and up and up. If it's going up the trunk, it's done a lot of damage to the root system already, if that makes sense.
So you'd be expecting to see more crown dieback, wouldn't you, if it was
I would expect, yes, I'd expect
that far along? Yeah.
Symptomatics of dehydration. So paling of the foliage, reduced leaf size, dead thinning of the canopy, reduced leaf size, reduced extension growth. So because of what it's doing, it's affecting the uptake of water. You can get Phytophthora leading to instantaneous death. That is, it gets in and it goes through the root system in no time at all, and the tree will just turn brown. In that situation, you'll see the foliage being marquescent. It'll hang on and it'll be dead. Now, there are other things that give the same symptoms, but that's just one of those that goes with Phytophthera. It won't shed out. They'll just die all of a sudden. And let me see if I don't know whether I've got a lesion in my image. So let me just see if I can. Photos, let's duplicate. Yeah, so this is the sort of thing we're talking about in this particular case. Just this inverted area, this little inverted area of necrotic tissue. So this is dying back here. You can see here that's actually dying off. It's not just going a little bit. That in that case, I think that might have been armillaria, which tends to be more problematic than Phytophthera. So hopefully that answers that one.
Yeah, great. Thank you.
Okay, great. Next one up. Okay, now a fungal fruiting body on a tree, and the tree is a hibiscus tiliaceae. What is it, Peter? Tiliata, is it?
Tiliaceae, I think.
Yeah, hibiscus. And it's got this brown fungus at the base of it. Peter, boy, that looks awfully like Phlinus noxious. I don't know what your thoughts are.
I didn't think so. The fruiting bodies that we were looking at are the sort of round, circular ones.
So the fruiting body are these.
Just go up go up to the maybe the first photo. Yeah. So those are
dots here.
Yeah, down a bit.
Yeah, sorry. These ones here.
Yeah,
very crusty type material. I don't know, Peter. That's what I said. The first thing I thought about is, oh, have we got Phlinus noxious?
Yeah, so I mean, it's possible. Didn't strike me as
it's looking a lot like it.
PM. Yeah. So Alex said that he'd seen that around quite a bit, and immediately picked one of those circular pieces off, and said, "This is what I believe is the fruiting body."
Yeah, certainly. It does look fungal, but I'm not sure what it is.
There's certainly some decay, fungal decay in the base of the tree. And the thing had fallen over, and the crown was resting on the ground, but only half of the trunk broke.
This discoloration of the wood, though, is interesting. And again, it just makes me wonder whether it's not PN, but yeah, I'm not sure is the answer. Nice and easy. Love it. So another one that came up, and I can't tell you who it was, Peter, you might be able to. Somebody asked a question about bracing a tree, and bracing a tree is an interesting process, whether it should be static or dynamic, whether it should be cables or cobras, or whether it should be bolted. There are a whole pile of variables in terms of what we do with the tree when the tree needs to be dealt with in some way. First question is, why would we want to do it at all?
That's a very important question. I think it gets a bit overlooked or answered too easily sometimes.
Well, I'd say it's usually to make the customer feel better.
Well, that could be an important thing, but let's have a look.
When you have partial failures, like on significant trees, that
So partial failure on a significant tree, and if I can throw one up, this is not a significant tree, but that's a reasonable partial failure. If that was an important tree, you might want to do something to prevent that from breaking. And what would you do? In something like this, I would put, rather than, I'd probably look at bolting first, just because I'm a old-fashioned sucker, a pair of offset bolts. Why a pair? To stop rotational forces on the junction. But this has probably gone past the stage where it's ever going to address it by itself. Now, I don't know whether I can pull up a brace shot. Let me try and brace. Oh, yeah, I've got a few there. So, you know, this is an important tree in New York Botanic Gardens. So aim is to keep it, not lose it. And so they're just using cables to stop the thing from falling apart. And it's here, the issue is not risk to a person. Here, the issue is risk to the tree, which is a nice reversal of the role. And this, by the way, is what? Let me just go back in nice and close to it.
The crack.
Hazard beam crack.
Hazard beam.
It has been crack. And that, you know, what would you do with that? The answer is on a tree like that, with a hazard beam crack. So first of all, it's a gymnosperm. It's not particularly bad. It's not overly loaded. I would just accept that's a part of it and guess, again, it's from New York. What do you think caused that hazard beam crack to occur?
A storm.
Yeah,
Maybe.
close. Heavy weight, heavy loading.
Snow.
No, yes, no. And snow really does bring it to the fore in colder areas. You'll see it quite frequently. So if I can, again, this tree was braced and it recently failed, which is unfortunate. I don't know whether I can find the braces for you. Oh, yes, I can. There we are. You can see lots of cobra braces right through it. Big storm came through and things got torn to pieces. So bracing doesn't stop failures. I think that's just a misnomer. You know,
Mark, can we go back to the previous one? I noticed that those cables were taut.
Yeah. It's stopping complete collapse. So it's already cracking and spreading apart. So they don't want it to move any further. Is that a good way to brace? It depends on the purpose. If you're looking at trying to prevent impact, then something like the Cobra system makes more sense in that you're allowing dynamic movement, but it's going to catch. Well, of course, the top portion of the tree blew out, bits broke off everywhere in a microburst, and it's what you're going to have happen. You're not going to be able to stop that. So I think you've got to be careful when you sort of say, look, we're bracing, we're going to stop things from failing. When you have a severe wind event, things are going to break, and there's nothing much you can do to stop that.
So those steel cables or those metal cables that you showed, they're supposed to be taut, aren't they?
Those ones were meant to be taut, yeah, because they're trying to stop it from moving any further.
Yeah.
And trying to allow the tree to strengthen up and just be there as a protective process. So it depends on what you're trying to achieve. And that's the question again of whether I'd throw 2 bolts into that the very first example. The answer is probably, because 2 bolts, 2 M16 rods will give an incredible amount of holding. Would I do it? Probably not for where it is. But if it was in, let me make it a significant tree, Rob. It's a tree that one of your kids planted. They've been killed in a car accident. Almost anything now is worthwhile, and you don't want it to fail. The one drawback of messing around with canopy bracing in rigid terms is you start altering the way the tree responds. In the case of that pine in the Arboretum, it was probably a 3-meter high specimen. It wasn't a thing that was really significant in terms of dealing things. And this was a reasonable approach by the cities as Port Macquarie. There was probably another option that wasn't explored at all that was probably heaps better than bracing. Has anyone got any thoughts on what it might have been?
Moving the target.
No, look, it's a major. Let me see if I can open up the location of this tree. It's a major public area, so I can't imagine removing the target would work for that.
Leaf arm reduction.
Ground reduction, yeah.
Could do some reduction pruning, and reduction pruning is hard to do, and it's often poorly done. But yes, I think reduction pruning probably had some.
Stump grinder pruning?
No, I don't like stump grinder pruning. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Yeah, no, I think that's a little harsh. So this is a major waterfront area. There's our tree there. It's it's a pretty high profile area.
Why did they think it was likely to fail, Mark?
Peter, historically, we always used to think that figs were bulletproof. And I guess in the late 90s, we started to see the occasional fig fail, and that started to rock the confidence of people a little bit, I think. And so this is a number of unions that were relatively tight.
But they weren't unhealthy. They were just poor form.
Yeah, but not uncommon for Ficus microcarpa hilii. Who would agree with that?
Yeah.
I think that the thing that was lost here and that didn't get done, and I'll argue it to the day I die. Well, let's see if I can go to.
And it did fail in a microburst. So if somebody was sitting under it in a microburst, well,
they deserve to die. Yeah, I agree. And what was interesting is big sections didn't fall out from the reports that I've seen. It was the top portions broke off. So it probably did do some benefit in terms of preventing whole limb failures.
I've seen a number of figs, unusually high number of figs fail this year, where a big branch or a third of it's fallen off, and I don't think I would have been able to tell it was likely to happen before the failure, but after the failure, you could definitely see there's some decay in there that had weakened it. But I really don't know that you could be able to see that before it failed. So if the tree looks healthy, even if there's poor unions, then why would you think that it's likely to fail?
Yeah, I think that's a fair comment, Peter. If you're talking about things that you can't reasonably observe from ground level failing, they're in our background risk level, and our background risk level from trees for people, and I know that property is a whole nother deal, but people sits at about 1 in 10 million.
Which is an acceptable sort of risk to take given the benefit that you get from the trees. And the other thing is that comes to mind is that if you were to look at a tree like that and think, oh, well, we've got to spend, I don't know, $5,000 putting cobra bracing through it, how many more of these trees are there that we should be doing that with?
Well, that's right. I mean, you can't. I mean, I most cheekily talk about inspecting every tree in Australia for a centre tree. But this is an interesting example of the process. And if I can see more dates. You can go back a while, and this tree dropped a dirty big branch. And so the decision was made, I don't know whether you can see that, the decision was made to, in inverted commas, reduce the tree. And if I come from maybe here, no, yeah, well, you can see they cut it right back. It's just been lollipopped. And the reason why is it dropped this big limb here. And one of the things that we discussed with the community group is you could actually get new roots to develop. If you have a look here, they're trying to get those roots to grow down here. Why? Because a single root in prop gives incredible extra strength to any union. So the one thing I think that was missing in that approach to the fig is you could have readily got aerial roots to grow. Now, I'm going to guess that the failure on this bit occurred in about 2000 and we can go back to 2007, probably 2005. And if we go along, you'll see this has now got a big prop by 2016. And that, even if that junction was questionable, it stops the failure occurring there. The failure has to occur further out. What was interesting is if we go back, there's another tree down here, and I think I've got shots of them on site. I just don't know that I'm going to get it from here. But this tree was also reduced in the 2005, and you'll see almost no reduction. So one was supervised by an arborist. The arborist says the only way you can reduce, and when I talked to you earlier on, I said reduction pruning is hard to get right. It's often poorly done. The arborist that supervised said, let's just take 1/3 of the length off. The arborist that supervised this portion, once that arborist had gone, you can see the security fence to stop people from getting killed by the tree. That arborist went through and cut just 1/3 of the foliage out from the end, and 2/3 of the foliage were left almost indetectable. Really good quality work. And needless to say, both trees are still there, but this one on this corner had a lot more harm done to it.
When you do that reduction pruning, Mark, say the tree that had the work done a lot better, you reduce it by 1/3, take a bit off the end. How long does that work before the tree grows back and you're looking at the similar sort of force that you had before?
It never does it because it alters forever. So it's a really good process. What you've done now is reduce the load, and you've probably heard this, Peter. You know, a small reduction in the lever arm and the weight has an incredible reduction down at the junction.
But doesn't the tree grow back?
Yeah, it does. But now we've got the thicker tissue and the bigger tissue there all the time. So good reduction pruning would aim at not trying to reduce the growth rate significantly of the stem in terms of thickening, but rather take the ends out. So it's taking the ends out. And I can show you one that I saw the other day. I just thought I might have had another couple of shots of.
Do we have any data on the effectiveness of good quality reduction pruning on tree failure? I know that there's some arborists in the UK that are very keen on it.
Yeah, look, and likewise out of the US, Ed Gilman, for example, you know, rectify your faults, reduce down bits, subordinate where you need to, is not uncommon. That's the same tree there with the prop. So that's just something that ficus, lots of other trees will do it, but ficus is just able to do it so readily, and it seems silly not to do it. How do you stimulate it? Make a small wound, add some rooting hormone, add some moist material, keep it dark, and it'll grow. And once they start to grow, they'll grow downwards quite readily. Hollow tube, core flute, something like that, turn it into a circle, tape it together, fill it with peat, have a little bit of extra dripping into the top of it if you can, some extra irrigation. And ficus can put up to 1 metre of root growth on in a month, which is phenomenal. Once it hits the ground, it changes its behaviour significantly and starts to prepare to become a load-bearing component. It's biochemically, it just is set up that way. And I can show you a nice little one. I think I've got it here. Banyan fig. Well, banyan figs everywhere. Yeah, it still came out. You can get out what I was trying to type. This is a banyan fig here. This one whole thing's about 1/4 of an acre. It's in India. It's a tree with a grey spread, and you can just see the number of aerial roots that are supporting this thing. Just phenomenal. And they're grown really simple process. they use is they just split bamboo, take the septae or the joins out, so that's in two parts, tied back together, filled with peat, and once the root hits in it, it sits down and develops a prop in just a matter of, a season or two. Quite phenomenal. So I think that's something that would be nice to see more of. You could also use it, interestingly enough, and I know that I've been out with a few classes in the days at some of our better parks looking at issues. You can actually use the same thing as a tensile member and graft over the other side. So you could actually use it as a natural brace. And I think that, and if you've been in one of my anatomy workshops, you'll have heard me talk about it. If I can, Kalara, I think will give me a, not there, I want it in Google Photos. Stands out as a pretty obvious, there it is. So this is a couple of ukes, and you can actually see they've grafted completely down the bottom side here. They've almost got there. This is our image date. Hang on, I'll tell you what the image date is. 2016, so it probably has completely grafted on the top side now. And so you end up with, let's go back, we can do this. Go and have a look at the location. And not where I thought it was. No, that is incorrect location on that image. Go back to another one of it. Okay, let's have a look. It's saying where it is. That's not the same spot though. No, I was hoping I could open it and just show you, but you can get the idea. It's two trees, both besides each other. I suspect the day will come when we actually create that process. We'll go in, we'll put in a synthetic product like a nylon brace, and just take our codominant stems up a little higher, get them to come across, occlude, and form natural bracing. And I think that's probably between a decade and 2 decades away. So we'll look at something like that horrible tree that, I started off with that might need bracing. If you can get the tissue to join across and join and form a good graft, then the process is finished. And ficus is certainly something you can do that with quite quickly. And we see that by the fact that people do things like plait it and make espaliers. I think, Peter, there's a great espalier up your end of the world. The maize at, look at this. That's Annapolis espalier. Yours is a maize up at Alstonville, isn't there?
Yes, I've seen that. It is pretty amazing.
So you can play with that process, but yeah, if you're interested in trying to figure that out, the stimulant to make the wood grow quickly, or the wound wood grow quickly across that artificial structure is lanolin. Lanolin is a callus stimulant. As callus stimulates, you get wound wood produced next, and you can speed that up. But the letterbox is, I think, a pretty inhospitable thing for something to grow over. So I think the fact that it can do that over a letterbox is pretty amazing. Static versus dynamic, I would far rather a dynamic if I was trying to stop a failure from occurring, where there hadn't already been a partial failure. So, tight fork, and I'm a little concerned, an overweighted or overlong branch, and I think that's sort of often an often touted thing that in most cases isn't. That is, the tree already knows that it's overweighted or overlong. And I think if you're talking about a branch that's, overweighted or overlong, what would you generally do with it?
Reduction pruning.
Reduction pruning. And so typically what would happen in my experience is you'd remove the branch and raise the canopy, which is the worst thing to do in the situation. And when I'm talking about reduction pruning, again, I'm talking about no more than a third of the foliage of that whole limb section taken from the end.
Can you talk about lion's tails?
So lion's tailing is the opposite. It's when we take the internal. A while ago, pruning was often talked about. We'd say, I'm going to thin the tree. And that thinning often meant an arborist would get up into the tree and from the inside take out branches. And that's not what good thinning is. Essentially reduction pruning. It's taking stuff where the branch goes to the external of the canopy, and it's small and lots of cuts. If I can just, I'm pretty sure I can find a McDonald's store. I was outside a McDonald's store on the way back from Canberra not so long ago, and that's reduction pruning. I'll zoom in so you get a better, now that's extreme because they want to keep it back underneath the sign. But, the tree's still got a reasonable amount of its canopy. The cuts are mostly to nodes, not all. There's one here that's not that great, and there's another one in here. But overall, that's fairly good reduction pruning. I was quite impressed to see it in a McDonald's store of all places. So reduction pruning is hard to achieve.
On your ficus, I find it very difficult to reduce to suitable growth points.
Yeah, look, the secret on the ficus, Michael, is to follow the rules. So you want to reduce it to a node where there's another branch that's about 1/3 or more the diameter of the cut you're about to make. And that means you're not going to reduce much of the length.
No.
And that's fine. If you just do that, you'll end up doing two things. First of all, you'll reduce the load. And, if I get you to hold, go down to the gym tomorrow and hold let's have a look, a 30 kilogram weight straight out, see how long you can hold that out for, and then reduce that to a 20 kilogram weight. There's a significant difference in your ability to perform. And that's, just by taking 1/3 of the mass out of the very end. I know it's not a huge amount, but it's enough to make a difference.
Well, it makes a big difference the longer the lever, doesn't it? It's a bending moment.
It's bending, but you don't reduce that much, as I said, when you take 1/3 out. So if you go back to that second ribiginosa in that park, they didn't take much out, but that little bit still has a reasonably big impact. And I'm pretty sure I've got some images from Benab 11 of a eucalypt that's been reduced.
So just on that subject, Mark, if I take a little bit out of the end that has a reduction in the load at the union, but if it's that's on a still day, but if it's a windy day, well, then it has a greater reduction at the union.
Yeah, yes, that's right.
Because the force has increased, not just gravity, but also the wind.
No, that's right. And so it is the preferred method. And, it's not necessarily always the prettiest, but it's achievable. I don't think that I don't think we do it enough. And a part of the reason we don't do it enough is it's hard. Oh, there's a reduction prune. Is it before or after, though? I can't tell you. I think that's after it's grown back. That was habitat pruned. The council wouldn't let it go.
There's a few overextended branches in that one, isn't there?
Well, I know this is one that I recommended. This is in a school in Calcare, I know the tree now. Yes, it had been reduction pruned. This was a little bit hard and heavy. And my question to them was, why, when you end up like this? Now, what would you take out of this? The answer is probably, maybe that piece there, maybe that piece there, let me zoom in so you can, there's a suitable reduction cut there. There's a suitable reduction cut there. I would have taken 50% out, too much of the canopy out. The part of the problem with often what we're left to maintain, Michael, is that they've been stripped out before. This process,
yeah, it's been lion-tailed.
Lion's tail. Now, if you go to Stanford campus in California, they've got a shopping center, massive, magnificent place, magnificent facility, huge, beautiful resources and trees and plants. But they've got a shopping center with Phytophthera undulatum in it, and that's their shopping center planting outside the shops. And these have been maintained at sort of less than 5 meters in height, 40 or 50 odd years. And what they do there is they reduce, open up, let more light in, get suckers going. As suckers go, they select the next sucker to become the next part of the permanent canopy. And, there's a point to which when we lion's tail, particularly from our thicker canopy trees, we don't get too many spots to go back to. What we should be doing is letting light in by doing heavier reduction pruning at the top, and then allowing that to come back in. Let me show you another reduction prune.
When you do the lion's tail, don't you compromise the dampening effects of those branches? You could see it on those branches that have been lion's tail, they move a lot more than others of the same length.
They don't move more. The ends move more. And Kelly, you're a smart enough man. If we were to go out fishing, we're going to go take a fishing rod. We've got a nice long rod, and we decide that we're going to sabotage Mick when he goes. We're going to get his rod and we're going to gaff tape to 2/3 of the length of that rod a piece of bamboo, just a nice solid piece of bamboo all the way along. What's going to happen?
That the tip only is going to bend.
The bottom's going to be more rigid. The
Yeah.
top is going to not move as easily, and it's going to snap. If you're a young kid, now I know you didn't grow up in Australia, if you're a young kid and you came across a young sapling and it had a cicada at the top, and when we were young kids, we collected cicadas. Is that right, Rob? Every kid had to go catch them. You would pull it down and you'd hear it. You'd pull it down until you hear that little cracking. You think, and you say to your mates, come on, come over. And the next guy would grab a bit. And if they grabbed further out and the whole thing, you could actually get the tip right down. But if you just tried pulling in one spot, it became problematic. You'd break the thing. Well, when you lion's tail, this bottom part now that was being loaded is now not loaded. Just the top is loaded. So it tends to break out towards the end. And that's the problem with lion's tailing.
When you say it broke more, it was making a focal point for the branch to bend, and more so at the middle or somewhere near the middle of the branch.
Well, it relates to where you prune it to or how far you strip it out, Michael, and how long ago it was. But yes, your end now is becoming too flexible for a rigid support below it. And just like your fishing rod, if you gaff taped it up to that point, it'll break where the rigid point stops. In the case of lion's tailing, you've still got taper in your branch, so it's not quite that at that spot, but you will end up getting the tips breaking out. And in fact, Matt Wells, when he was doing his masters at Santa Monica, did work on it, and he showed that the trees that they most frequently pruned, or the more frequently they pruned a tree, the more likely it was to fail. And a part of that was, with the greatest respects to tree pruning in America, it was appalling. In general, they often like this process of over thinning and over pruning trees. And in fact, when you get down to San Diego, a place like that, they call it lace pruning. And it really is just simply heavy lion's tailing.
A lot of it's cultural too, Mark, that a lot of the labor force comes from south of the border, and there are cultural practices that, that people, just horrified me when I was back there for 2.5 years after living in Australia and doing my arbor work here for 20 years.
Yeah.
And going back, it's, and things like still climbing palm trees with spikes and, yeah.
Yep. So this is, a tree that can be difficult to reduce. This is a jacaranda in New Zealand, and this has been reduced for more than 30 years. You think about it, that's not particularly bad going when you look at it. It's not very obvious at all, and that's just done by Gary Claxton. Is the arborist that owns the tree. It's his own tree.
So was it pruned to growth points, or was it?
Yeah, you can see it's reduced to growth points. And as a new bit comes in, then you get the opportunity to reduce back down, take a bit out. So you can use reduction pruning to maintain and manage trees for a long period of time. Gary is just a neat guy. He's not, he's not the great arborist or anything, just loves his tree, doesn't want to lose it. And not only does he not want to lose it, but if you look carefully, he doesn't want to lose his flowers. You can see it's flowered quite well. You can see the flower head. So, it's possible with a good understanding of how a tree works to have a significant impact on the shape. Now, I'm not saying that you want to do that all the time, but I am saying there is a place and a role for it. And when you talk about these overlong branches, I question how you know it's overlong. It's not saying that it isn't long, but doesn't the tree know that it's long? And why is the tree not going to deal with that? I think there are some exceptions to that general philosophy, and one of them is probably liquid ambers for us here in the East Coast. Poor material genetically, the branch gets out the side and then it wants to grow upwards. And the problem with that is that adds an incredible amount of extra load onto the branch. But what's the role of a branch? Produce photosynthetes. So from that side, it's been quite successful. There was another part with that question. Okay, somebody else asked about a prognostication report. Is that person online?
Yeah, that was me, Mark. Andrew.
Andrew, thanks, Andrew. Prognostics. What's prognostics about? It's a horrible word. We use it in the thing because it's got a distinct and definite meaning. But what does it mean?
Prediction for the future.
Yeah. What's likely to happen? So when you're being asked in the diagnostic process, and are you studying your diploma, Andrew?
Yes, I am.
Yeah. Okay. It'll be interesting to see how they've addressed it in terms of delivery and assessment. But if I've got a tree and something's happened to it, or something is happening to it, I should be able to give some idea of what's going to happen if I don't do something. If I have a management plan, what's likely to happen and when it's likely to happen, so that you can go back. Your doctor does it to you all the time. The doctor says, look, I think you've just got a bit of a stress headache. Take to Nurofen. If the pain's there tomorrow, let me know. That's so what he's saying to you in essence is diagnostic. I think you've got a tension headache. 2 Panadol should give you, or 2 whatever, will give you a period of break now. And if that's correct, it should be subsiding tomorrow. That's sort of the process. And we want to do it all the time because necessarily do we want to treat? And I said to Peter, I wanted to go get a sample because I noticed that I had a tree, a small little tree that was having some issues earlier on. And hopefully you can pick up the video when I go to it. Can you see a little screen there in front of you guys? Gray screen?
Yep.
Yep. So this is a digital microscope that I'm using. And what do you see?
A bug.
Let me go up.
Mites.
Yeah, mites. They're mites. So I didn't know what was wrong. I just had this thing sitting there. I'm just going to zoom right in so we can get some better magnification. So there we are, little two-spotted mite. I can tell that. This is on a buddleia. I've got lots of young there, very heavy population. And on a symptomatics, my leaf was looking, I've got to zoom out now. My leaf was giving me this stippling effect. So it was not looking that good. It was quite paled out. Stippling, remember, looks like the paintbrush effect. And I'm not convinced that I don't have a second species of mite on there yet. What the hell is that red thing?
Is it scale? Is it moving?
There might be mite eggs. I don't know. Well, there's one
Eggs.
mite there.
There's an egg there. There's a yellow one there.
Lots
Is that
of
an egg?
there's round yellow eggs, and then there's little red eggs. And so I think those little red ones might be a predatory mite. I don't know, but definitely mites. So now I've got a disease. I know I've got two-spotted mite. What's going to happen? Well, I've lost probably 50% of the photosynthates. I've got some leaves that have been reduced down in size. Here's one that's definitely reduced in size. If I don't treat, I think it's going to affect the health of the tree. Would you agree with that? Would that be a fair?
Yeah.
Okay. It might shed. It might drop all of its leaves and then use that as a chance to restart. But I wouldn't want to, there's a lot of mites. There's just a huge number. So I've decided I'm going to treat. I made a decision. The wife has come to me and she said, I'm not happy with my buddleia not looking good. What are you going to do about it? So I go to my little bag of tricks and I say, well, I could use spinosad. Spinosad's are reasonably good. I could use neem oil. Neem oil, I love neem oil and its impact on mites. So I could use that. Okay, well, if I use neem oil and I give it a spray, what do I expect to happen? Well, I'd expect in probably 2 weeks or so's time, the number of mites would have dropped down significantly. And it's coming into autumn, so I don't know that I'm going to get a new flush until spring. So I'd probably say I need to recheck. So my things would be, if we've managed the disease properly, Andrew, I should be seeing a good new flush of full-size leaves next spring. Now, Anna, my daughter-in-law, works with my wife, and she's one of those die-hard vegans that says you can't go killing mites. Okay, she wants it to be more gladiatorial. So now I've got to change my program because Anna's intervened, got into my wife's ear and said, oh, that's horribly cruel. You shouldn't do that. Right? I'm not going to argue, but we've got to deal with that now. So we're going to use predatory mites. And what do I expect to see happening now? So again, it's the same process of looking at what's the outcome going to be in the longer term. They're really vague ones. You can get a lot more specific. For example, if I've got Phytophthera noxious, Peter, and it's on a ficus in your end of the world, what's the prognosis?
It's likely to die.
It's likely to die. The canopy's already at 50%.
It's probably too late to treat it at that stage.
Way past too late. And what should they be looking at doing?
Removing the tree and thinking about treating the soil to get rid of the Phytophthera noxious.
Yeah, and if they don't remove the tree, what's your prognosis of what will happen?
The tree is likely to start falling apart.
So nice and easy prognosis in that situation, Andrew.
Yep.
So, and what you would say, oh, look, why can't you be precise? I want you to start thinking about the medical fraternity now. One of my wife's closest friends got diagnosed with pancreatic cancer last year. You know, oh, well, it's not a big problem. Then the test results came back, it's a bigger problem than thought. You know, what's the survival rate going to be? This is the normal process. Prognostics not about precision, it's about giving a most likely outcome so that somebody has an idea of what to expect, where the next step should be. If my predatory mites are working well, I should see the mite numbers start to drop down the next few weeks. They're never going to get down to zero. Why?
Because the mite population, the predatory mites don't completely eliminate their prey. They just reduce the population. As the population reduces, they're less able to find mites to
yeah, it depends on which one's the last one to survive. Has anyone ever thought about, I know you have, Peter, anyone ever thought about how mites get around?
Are they moved by birds and the wind and people, things like that?
Oh, yeah, all those can be. But how did this two-spotted mite get on this buddy? It was outdoors. How did it end up there, and why did it end up in such high population numbers?
It must be a plant species that they like. Protected.
No, I've got another one. I haven't checked it yet. I only just grabbed. I saw it this morning, and I said to myself, I've got something that's affecting it. So it's a Phytophthera. So I knew it was either going to be a Hemiptera or a Thyssanoptera or Aracae mites.
Is it up in a protected spot? Because mites, they don't like open spaces. They tend to affect the canopy on small plants up toward the inside, but they're protected.
So it is in a protected spot. It's but it's outdoors protected. But mites get around by wind dispersal predominantly. So they spin a small little strand of silk, and then they're able to balloon, or what they've done is increase their surface area so they're blown around. So the worst situation, and you said it, Kelly, is when they're in a confined spot, courtyards, glass houses, really problematic. Because if there's not enough wind and you've just hatched and you're looking for a place to go, you've got to be dispersed. And if you're not dispersed, by the time you get a little bit bigger, that becomes more and more problematic. So the populations can get to incredibly large numbers quite quickly.
They're a plague in greenhouses.
Yeah, they're a nightmare in greenhouses. Having said that, once your greenhouse is in nice balance, and that is when you're not trying to eradicate every two-spotted mice and you've got predatory mites, they tend to settle down quite remarkably. I ended up having to treat my glass house once, and that's it. It's been in balance ever since. So, you know, a mite here or there is not a problem as long as it's not out of balance. And so there again would be good prognostics on my my mite control. If it was in a glass house, is if I've got it right and I've used predatory mites, it should get to a stage where, you know, I can go several years without seeing too many problems.
Are ladybirds a potential predator as well, Mark?
I haven't seen them. There was one ladybird on the Buddleia this morning, but I haven't seen them ever get to big numbers of dealing with it. And I think that's just because they're small. They're hard to, you know, consume a large volume. Whereas if you're a ladybird feeding on aphids, an aphid's, you know, probably 100 times bigger. It gives you a lot better meal.
So where do you get the predatory mites from?
Bugs for Bugs is my go-to for predatory organisms. They do lacewings. I don't know that they do hoverfly larvae. Hoverfly larvae are wonderful. So they do lacewings, they do mites, predatory mites, they do a few other bits and pieces. If you're up in Peter's end of the world, there's a moth that affects macadamias. There's somebody up that end of the world that's doing predatory wasps, I know for that. So we don't do a lot of biological control in Australia. And in part, that's just spraying is an easy process, I guess. Not that it should be, but it is. And we tend to be more chemically oriented. But if you're an organic farmer, and that's what my father did for the last 10 years of his working life, you don't get that as a choice. You don't want to use anything that's going to affect your status as an organic farmer. So I guess it just depends on what your priorities are. Do I think Anna's right in saying no to sprays? No. Do I think she's wrong? No. I think it's really down to a personal preference. Where something works to a stage where you don't have to keep on doing it all the time, that's great. So we're looking at controlling something like Phytophthera calypso, the little green lily-pilly leaf beetle. And I think now, Mick, you've got it in WA, haven't you? You've got your mic off, Mick.
Yeah, sorry, I haven't heard of that one, Mark. We're dealing with polyphagous shot hole borer.
Oh yeah, we don't want it. You can keep it over your end of the world. Polyphagous shot hole borer. When I found it was there, I was on to every biosecurity department on the East Coast saying, ban plant material coming across, because that's where it's going to come from. So Phytophthera calypso is a little lily-pilly beetle. It was believed to have had a source around about Coffs Harbour. It was first identified by Maclay in 1800 something or other. We didn't know what it fed on. We just knew that it was Crismillidae, so it was going to be a leaf-feeding beetle. And then about 2004 or 2005, all of a sudden, it starts to become a major problem in nurseries and on hedges. Nurseries, because if you're selling a lily-pilly and it looks like it's half chewed, it's not got any value. So within a matter of 3 years, it had gone right through from Queensland all the way through to South Australia. And one of the major ways that was distributed was through plants. Now, you can't import plants into WA with any ease, and certainly not potted plants. So they've quarantined themselves out. There's another disease that was exotic that was brought in, and that was Phytophthera celti, the hackberry aphid, and that definitely hit Perth. And the reason it hit Perth is it didn't need soil. It was just happy to hijack, sit on someone's clothing and move around. And it came into Australia through Richmond. I won't say that the RAF was responsible, but I'd be highly suspicious that that was where it came in through. And I'd say they were probably the source of spreading it, because it started its population in Richmond, New South Wales. And I'd say the RAF base there, as they did exercises and they flew their aircraft, it just hitchhiked along and it was able to spread quite rapidly.
What's that one called, sorry?
The Asian hackberry aphid, or Phytophthera celti. And it in its early stages, it produces huge amounts of honeydew, just amazing. I've never seen a hemiptera produce as much, but the native insects seem to have settled it back down. It's one of those wonderful things that, as much as we have problem organisms, we have a lot of brilliant predatory organisms.
And what's the host range for it, Mark?
Celtis.
We don't have a lot of Celtis here.
Yeah. I was amazed. It came out within 12 months. It was in South Australia at Wade Arboretum, and there weren't that many Celtis there. It doesn't take a lot to get a hit. And the same reason is, when you start talking about, I think we talked about earlier on, host-specific feeding. So you've got different sorts of things called phages. You've got monophagus, that is something that eats one host only. A really good example of that would be Predatory undulatum is attacked by a little fly that causes leaf blotch on Predatory undulatum. And it only attacks one species. Then you get things that attack a group of trees. You might find something like Phoracantha semipunctata, for example, the tiger longicorn. It feeds on a range of eucalypts, a range of myrtaceae. Then you get things that are polyphagous, and they don't care what they're feeding. Probably the most polyphagous disease that we have in Australia is possums. They'll go at anything. Does anyone know anything they don't eat? My previous one that I thought they might not have done was a frangipani plumeria, and Adam Tom called me up about 5 or 6 years ago and said, I've just found been chewed. So,
do they eat pines? The possum?
they do, and casuarinas. So they'll eat cedar. So I've seen cedar stripped to the point of death. So they're very broad in what they eat, Michael. Michele, sorry.
Today we encountered a possum and its baby in a cotton palm. So this is the second time I've seen possums in Washingtonia.
Yeah, I haven't seen.
I don't know if they eat them or not.
They'll eat on, or they'll nest in them. They do in phoenixes. They'll chew the lower leaflets and parts of the petiole to make a nest. Rats are worse on palms. But yes, so sorry, I got to kill that. Steve Newbone. We don't want to talk to him. Yeah, in terms of phages, there are these different things. So things that have a broad range of hosts are more readily dispersed around and can be more problematic. Fortunately, most of those aren't particularly bad. Possums would account for 10% of my disease diagnosis. And I just love it. I've got a standard fact sheet for it, standard inclusion. I call up the office and I say it was possums, and the report's 90% written before I get back to the office. It's that common for us. Is there anything like that in elsewhere in Rob? I know you're Melbourne, aren't you, Rob?
Yes, yeah, just as bad in Melbourne.
Awesome. Yeah, except you're allowed to euthanize brushtails in Melbourne, whereas we're not allowed to euthanize at all. We're not allowed to relocate except to 50 meters or less away, which is, well, if you take them out of your roof, that's good. But if you take them 50 meters away, I guarantee you they will beat you back. Doesn't matter how you do it. So
they're strongly territorial.
Yeah, and there's a reason why we don't want to take them out of that territorial environment, and it does. There's good research that shows it increases their mortality rate. So survivability drops down. Fortunately, brushtails have urbanized very well. But if you go back, Rob, to when I was a kid, I moved into a heritage house in Sydney that was owned by the government, and it had a ballroom, and the ballroom had a possum pelt and felt cover to cover a 12-meter by 12-meter room. You start thinking how many possum pelts were on that. And that's what we did. We shot them. It's an amazing fur. It's hollow. It's got phenomenal thermal properties, which is how they can live underneath a tin roof when we get 60-degree days, or 60-degree under the roof. I mean, that would cook a child, would cook a dog, it would cook a cat. The possum just fluffs up and says, "Okay, let me insulate myself." So, yeah, they're a little bit more problematic. Ringtails are different than brushtails. Ringtails will only damage the top part of the foliage and not the lower part. So they're essentially good reduction pruners. Don't need to worry about them, but brushtails will chew a tree to death, and they'll chew any tree. Camphor laurels, they'll chew them to death, which is mind-boggling, and ficus, they'll chew to death, which again is mind-boggling. So any other questions, guys? Because we've not done a whole pile, but we've gone through everything. We're at 1 hour and 15, and I'm trying to keep the...
I just want to make a comment on the pesticide and the treatments. they are a lot more strict in Europe with regulations on pesticides and chemicals that you can buy. I don't think you can buy Confident anymore over the counter in Europe or in Italy for sure. So here it's hasn't caught up that yet. So probably that's why you don't have a lot of these biological controls in place.
Yeah, I don't think you'll find it as ever the same here. The European response, particularly the French response to imidacloprid, was really quite interesting. Colony caps decline of bees is a big issue. And I know that there are many people here that are concerned about it. Australia is one of the highest users of the neonicotinoid group altogether per capita, even not the highest because our density of population is low. But we don't have colony collapse decline in Australia. And I might have mentioned this before, but there's a part of the reason colony collapse decline occurs, or the reason why, is early maturation of workers. So an Australian researcher broke through and figured it out about 7 or 8 years ago, something like that. France put a ban on Confidor. France still has colony collapse decline. The ban has been on now for about 9 years or 10 years, maybe a tad longer. And they've still got it. So anyone that wants to look at the straight logical connection, neonicotinoids have problems. We need to be careful with how we use them, particularly in terms of
and they can be toxic to us as well. They are quite persistent on the plant tissue, especially if you use them in crops.
Sorry?
My understanding is neonicotinoids are quite persistent in crops, so they can be toxic to people.
Yeah, look, they are, I mean, they're not highly, so neonicotinoids have a fairly low LD, or big LD50, so they're, you know, in terms of toxicity, they're probably not as problematic as things that I grew up with, which were things like chlordane, heptachlor, chlorpyrifos, the nasty OCs, the nasty OPs. I think the one thing that you could say is that if arborists went out and treated everything that was a major concern with a chemical of some description, the amount of chemicals we use probably wouldn't be as much as the biggest wheat or cotton growing area wherever we are. So, you know, on a 1,000-acre cotton farm, they'll use crap loads more chemicals than we're ever going to be using right across Australia. So we don't do. In fact, quick heads up, who here's done a more than 12 disease spray for diseases in the last 12 months? Who's done more than 12? Or soil inject or drench? So yeah, most arborists already have adapted a let's take it slowly, let's wait and see. In terms of my little buddleia, I will use a neem oil because I've got it and it does work so well. And again, we talk about chemicals, and neem oil is not whilst it might be a natural chemical, let me give you some other natural chemicals if I can. Lead, uranium, cyanide, you know, they're all
copper and sulfur.
Yeah, natural things. Natural does not equal low toxicity. And
we do a big elm leaf beetle treatment once a year, but that's probably really the only main one that we do.
And ELB,
City of Hobart. Yeah,
I recommend it for if you are on the East Coast for Peropsides calypso as a preventative treatment. So, you know, 3 sprays. But again, spraying is nowhere near the same as if you're using an ELB and you're doing a soil injection. The impacts of the soil injection are a little bit higher. But I think, you know, again, as a soil injection, I'd rather inject the soil than inject the trees. You know, I'm much more in favour of soil injection as a treatment protocol. Now, there'll be others that will say, Mark, you're affecting a whole pile of microorganisms in the soil when you do, and I'd say you're absolutely right. It's a value call again. It's one of those things where I'd rather hurt a little bit of the soil microflora, put some mulch down, take care of the tree, than hurt the tree. And holes drilled into trees do have some impact. We're getting better. Our sizes are getting smaller, and our chemical processes are getting better, and silver shield's certainly been an improvement. The one drawback is we don't have something yet that's even so the spinosads, that new group of chemicals, really wonderful chemicals, but limited in terms of what it will affect. So and how it moves and how effective it is. So in terms of systemics, I think neonicotinoids are going to be there for an extra few decades. There are better options than imidacloprid, but they're usually not available at a domestic level, and I think that's the going to be the problem. But we are seeing push to some of the newer generation nicotinoids, which have a lower indirect effect on other things, bees being one of them. But simple way to stop the bee problem is don't spray during flower. If you're going to spray, try and keep it 2 or 3 months before flowering, and that'll reduce the problem down associated with bees. But if you do inadvertently hit bees with imidacloprid, rest assured that whilst we do have varroa mite, we don't have the virus in Australia, and our bees aren't getting stressed. In fact, one of our exports, and we take them over in a pallet load, and you can think about how many bees are in a pallet. We take them over by pallet loads to California, and what do we do with them over there?
To pollinate the almonds?
Pollinate the almonds. And why do we keep on shipping them over?
Because they're declining population there as well.
That monoculture production has a horrible adverse effect on bees, and so they're losing their colonies constantly. So we're exporting bees for that purpose. Shortfall on that, and again, it gives testimony to the quality of our bees here in Australia. My sister is an amateur beekeeper. When she was living in New York, she was so proud because city grown bees actually have better health in general and lower stress rates. And part of the reason why is they have a more broad, diverse food source than a monoculture. So monoculture is a stressing agent. And if you've been to California, and Melanie, I'm sure has, some of you haven't, you hit that backside out of California where the almonds are growing, and you can drive for 15, 20 minutes and see nothing but almonds with an occasional punctuation of persimmons or something else that's, just a little pocket. But you'd have to say in those areas, the almond population could be up to 50% of the plant material. And bees have a really fascinating little habit. The first plant that they pollinate in the day is the plant that they'll preferentially pollinate for that day. So when 50% of your plant material is almonds, you really are setting life up for bees to have a failure. Okay, guys. If there's anything else you'd like to look at, email Peter. Was having a look at the mites under the microscope worthwhile? We can do more of that sort of stuff as
Yeah,
well.
that was good. Yep.
Yeah, good.
Yeah.
That was good.
Okay, guys, I'll see you in a month's time. I think